right, we're live, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is our nonfiction book club, Brown Bagging It, lunchtime, fun time discussion here. We did a nonfiction graphic novel, and so that particular book was called A Fire Story by Brian Fees, who is a pretty acclaimed graphic novelist. He's done graphic novels, graphic nonfiction. One of his more celebrated works was called Mom's Cancer. So yeah, he's a really great artist, really great storyteller. And this, this particular story we thought would be a good one because it kind of hits home here in the Central Valley. We still are kind of experiencing some of the aftershocks of the wildfires and smoke coming through. Definitely not experiencing as much as folks up in Northern California in 2017 when this all happened. But yeah, this kind of seems like a new reality. I don't know. I wanted to ask the panelists here today. I mean, is this kind of just like a new normal now in terms of like wildfires? I mean, California has always kind of been plagued with wildfires to a certain degree, but now it seems like every summer that I've lived here in the Central Valley, things just continue to get almost worse and worse. Maybe this year hasn't been as bad as 2017, but is this something that we kind of have to accept and prepare for? I don't know. What do you folks think?
It sure looks that way. I mean, it seems like every summer it's a replay of the prior summer and the prior summer before that. And when I was younger, I don't recall it being as devastating as it has been lately. Maybe that was my younger, not in tuned mind. I don't know, but I don't recall it being anywhere near this degree.
For sure. What do you think, Sherry? Can you recall growing up you lived in kind of Northern California back in the day, didn't you? So.
Yeah, I lived in Sonoma County. So there were fires, but it was never this widespread from my youth. Further north, perhaps, but never this. Santa Rosa.
Yeah, I mean, we just recently, I haven't really seen an update. I don't really know kind of when we are determined that fires are out, but recently in Lake Isabella in eastern Kern County, I mean, there's a pretty serious fire that broke out that was really difficult to contain. You even know, has that been under control? Is that still going? Is that what this residual smoke that we're kind of experiencing now is coming from?
Well, there have been several fires, and that's why we're getting smoke. And I mean, even if you went outside yesterday, it was smoky. And I'm not even sure where that one was coming from. We've had a couple of fires up the canyon. And interestingly enough, the library for the earlier one was one of the places where people came to get water and respite from what happened.
And we didn't lose any libraries in that Lake Isabella fire, right?
We did not.
I know. I know. I definitely would have heard about that. That's great. So I guess kind of the one thing that I liked about this book the most, sort of how the author, Brian Fees, kind of takes you on the journey of sort of what happens when you kind of find yourself in the pathway of one of these sort of fires, and how it seemed the emergency system that they had in place wasn't necessarily used, or they're being conservative with it. And the thing that was astounding to me is that from the author and even the people that he talked to, they were just sort of oh, we didn't realize anything was going down until the power went out. And so it was just sort of I thought that was kind of shocking, just that I don't know, if it's more of a comfortable sort of ambivalence that, oh yeah, there's the fire, but it's over there, and we'll be fine. I think the other thing that was really kind of I guess, you know, you always want to hope for the best, but like everybody they talked to, and especially the author, was like, oh no, we knew we were coming back. So we only grabbed a few things. They're like, oh, we would be back. You know, they're evaluating us now, but everything's going to be fine tomorrow or in a couple days. That kind of like attitude really sort of like, I don't know. I mean, if I was put in the same situation, maybe I would think the same way, or maybe I'm too much of a pessimist and just be like, oh, it's all gone. Like, I mean, you never want to think that way, but you know, I don't know. I was just trying to like kind of put yourself. He does a good job of kind of putting yourself in that situation, because one thing that I was thinking was like, I don't know, what would I grab? Like the power goes off at 2:30 in the morning, and you can see like a fire raging like along the horizon. And you're like, oh wow, like we better leave. Like, what do you grab? I don't know. What would you guys grab? Because especially because I don't know. Would you think that you're not coming back? Because everybody else thought that they would be back.
Well, you know, we live in the floodplains. At least when we first moved here to Bakersfield, there was all these flood disaster sort of things, and you'd have drills. I don't remember that being as prevalent now, but we have emergency backpacks by our door in certain places in our house, and we have a list posted on one of the doors in the utility room, which is on the way out to get your cars. But yeah, these people didn't know. And I remember one family in here said they didn't even think to get any clothes. And so, you know, and I guess I was also struck by, you know, you back up your computer, but oh my goodness, his backup, you know, his other computer was only 2 years old, or his backup was 2 years old. And then he had to manually transfer all his stuff. And because he was an artist, that was terribly, you know, important and horribly time consuming. It took him like 3 days. So, I mean, obviously now we grab our computers, you grab the dog. I know some of those places that were there up in Sonoma County was more rural. And so they were worried about their animals, their horses and so forth.
We lost Ethan.
We did lose Ethan. So we're still live though.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, it affected a lot of the rural folks up there. We had business acquaintances up there, and so they had more animals. And so that was logistically extremely difficult. Number one, to get them out as they were panicking. Number two, where do you store them? The thing that, you know, you don't wish to be a voyeur or anything, but as you look at this, you try to identify. I can't even imagine going to look at the, you know, I saw a lot of footage, and I mean, my family was involved because I saw a family up there. I can't even imagine going to this neighborhood or places you've lived for 30 years and there be nothing. I mean, the period of just disbelief. And the fact that they just found, you know, like the salt and pepper shaker, and they were so excited, just anything would be good. And I know insurance was an issue. We can't deal very well with this as a society with such widespread loss. We're used to dealing with just controlled loss. But I was pretty horrified to learn that the evacuation hadn't been as effective as one would hope.
Yeah, that bothered me, that the emergency alert system didn't even fail. They didn't use it.
They didn't use it.
Yeah, and that I wonder if that impacted, I would assume, lives that were lost that maybe wouldn't have been lost had they used the tools they had. But they weren't even aware of how all the tools even worked, which is kind of scary. I want to get to a couple of things you talked about. You brought up how you guys have an emergency backpacks. We're not ready at all. If something happened at our place, we're just like, oh my gosh, and we'd be running around grabbing things. It sounds like kind of like they did in the book. And 3 of the things I would grab first are my cats. And that would be hard because our cats, they tend to hide. And especially if they're frightened, they're going to try to hide. And they love you, but they also bring their claws out when they're scared. And so, and then putting 3 cats in a car and 2 of them don't really care for each other, it would be interesting.
So I'm hearing that you need a big box in your garage and you just, I'm sorry if you guys don't get along, but you just keep throwing them in.
Yeah, basically.
I know I do with my dog and be like, okay, fine. I'm throwing you in the car and I'm shutting the door really fast. And then
Well, dogs love to get in the car usually. My cats hate the car usually because that means they're going to the vet, so they don't like it.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So you brought up a couple of other points. You talked about insurance, and I sold insurance for a while,
True.
and a couple of the companies I worked for were very conservative with regards to insuring folks that lived in what they consider to be a fire hazard area. It's easy to insure a home and have to deal with one loss. An insurance company can do that, but when they potentially have hundreds or thousands of losses, as they talked about a little bit in the book, that becomes a completely different situation. And a lot of companies shied away from insuring, including a couple of them I worked at, shied away from insuring homes in areas like that where fires are more probable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's also interesting. Like there was the one person, like the construction worker there towards the end who had like, he was renting a place, and I guess like there were like 9 people like were renting space in this place, and only one of them actually got any insurance money, and everyone else was just completely left out in the cold. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of, yeah, I don't know. I mean, in these circumstances, I mean, I don't know, like, do only homeowners get reimbursed with like FEMA money and insurance money? Like if you're just renting a place, like, are you basically homeless? I mean, that guy I talked about, he's like, if he didn't have any family to help him out, like they would have been homeless. Like there was nothing like they could have done. Like they would have been on the streets. So the whole insurance, like, I don't know, everything is so like complicated where, like you said, like there's ways where, insurance companies will be reluctant to provide you with enough coverage because you live in like a more, disaster prone area. I don't really know.
Well, another thing that was interesting that it affected is, so people were homeless, and I mean, the costs up there are already just incredible. So some of them moved in some of these like retirement assisted living sort of areas and stuff. And so then when other people needed those sort of services, there weren't any. It was really hard, and those prices really skyrocketed also in those sorts of enclaves. It's just, the domino effect is just amazing, and the things that they were out of, and then the cost to relationships and families, what that did to family dynamics and the number of like, divorces and so forth when you have such a stressor.
Yeah, I mean,
Go ahead.
oh yeah, I mean, it's got to be hard. It's everything. Like he said, like there's that one page where he's like, he felt uprooted because he makes like the comment that people are like, well, it's just stuff. He's like, yeah, but all that stuff like had meaning. Like that was like my life. Like that was like my history. That's my connection to like so many other things. And now it's just all gone. It just is all pretty much like, burnt up into thin air. So that's got to be something really hard to deal with.
I don't mean to trivialize. I just keep trying to figure out what it would be like. Don't want to ever figure it out. When I went away to graduate school, I took like a trunk with me. That's basically all I took. And how that changed how I felt. I mean, I just felt like it was only me. I felt so alone. I didn't have, I couldn't take all my clothes. I couldn't take my books. You name it, I couldn't take it. Because I was moving from California to the Midwest. And so I try to think, well, what was it like for me? I lived in a room with my trunk. And I just, these people, they wanted to have iced tea. Oh, wait, we don't have a pitcher. Oh, wait, we don't have this. I don't know. Not even to have pajamas.
Yeah, we had a situation probably about 15 years ago where I was over at my brother's house playing cards. And I get a call from my wife. It's pretty late at night. She usually would have been in bed. And she said, come home right now. The house is on fire. Click. And so I'm kind of freaking out. And I drive home pretty quickly. I get home and expect to see fire trucks and everything. No, my wife didn't call the fire department because the house was a mess. And she put it out herself with a hose. But we were out of our house for months. We were living in a hotel. And so we didn't lose a ton of stuff in the fire, but we lost some things. But we had to deal with that stress of not living in your home. We had to deal with the stress of not having our stuff because we didn't have a ton of room in our little hotel. And so I'm just imagining that like compounded, and it's hard to imagine the stresses these people had to endure and probably are still enduring to this day.
Yeah, it's still, a lot of people have moved, but it's still really hard.
Yeah.
And construction is really backed up.
Yeah.
One thing I was going to ask before I lost internet connectivity, sorry about that, guys, was David, are you as prepared as Sherry is for an emergency?
You missed that. You missed that. Not close to as prepared as Sherry. No, I have nothing prepared. And we've had, we had to leave our house. And we're still not prepared. So it got me thinking, we really kind of need to do that. Maybe we still won't be as prepared as Sherry, but if we get a little bit prepared, that would be helpful because you just don't know when things like that are going to happen. Nobody ever expects it to happen, but it does.
One question I had, like,
I'm going to reevaluate my emergency backpacks.
Yeah.
One question I had was, what is like the one thing that you would hate to leave, like, but you might have to leave, and you may never get it again. Like, do you have like a certain possession or like one item? I mean, like, or in your house, like Sherry, like your piano. I mean, you would have to leave it.
On my organ and my hammered dulcimer.
Oh man, yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking about, where it's sort of like, because when he's kind of going through his list of different things, I'm like, oh man, that would just be devastating to lose some of those like old family films, videos, like your only like connection to, maybe some relatives that have passed, like certain things like that. Like, I don't know. I mean, I've moved a lot, so I don't have a whole lot of things, that I would just be like, oh, that was irreplaceable, so I can't really think of anything because I'm pretty transient most of the time. So
Yeah, it's books and pictures. I mean, the heirloom sort of, grandma's dish or whatever. I don't know.
what about you, David?
Those would be the hardest things to lose. Just, any of those memories, videos of kids' first steps. Again, stuff we should probably put online, with the, put on the cloud. So if something ever did happen, we still have that. Because there's so many of those things that, we've got we've been going through and doing some spring cleaning lately. So I've come across a lot of things that kind of, trigger memories. And, those are the things you don't want to lose. If I lost my computer, my couch, my TV, that's fine. Obviously the cats, and then, the memories.
Yeah, it seems like all the memories and things like that are also all highly flammable, sadly.
Yeah.
They're like
That's true.
the first things that go almost, whereas some things might survive, but the things you kind of wanted the most are all gone.
Maybe that vinyl
Tough.
for the cricket.
One thing, like a question, like I guess I had as I'm reading this is, he completely plans on rebuilding and being there again. I don't know. You guys may have talked about it while I cut out. Like, I don't know if I would stay. I mean, I guess it's your home. You have a connection to the place, but it's also, the terrain itself has been transformed, like from the fire. So it's sort of like maybe a lot of the things that were so desirable about that place and that space are no longer there. Like they've all burnt, and then just kind of like knowing like the risk or like the possibility of what could happen, or like just the uncertainty of it. I'm not sure if I would stay, but it's hard to say. Like, how would you feel like if for both of you, since you guys, you both have homes here, like you're fairly rooted down, you have things like that. Like, if given the opportunity, if something like that happened, and there's maybe a high risk, would you guys stay? Would you want to rebuild? Would you want to kind of finish it, or would you just kind of be like, it's too dangerous here now and we need to move on?
Well, I live in a suburb, so I'm not sure I'd think it's too dangerous. But just the immense work that it takes to start over, I don't know. A lot of those people have left and aren't rebuilding, but a lot of them are. But you're right, like the terrain's gone, all those big trees. And yeah, we do have someone on our staff that came here after a fire. There's a lot of trauma.
Yeah, like Sherry, I live in the suburbs too, and I wouldn't be afraid to rebuild. And I'm in a different space in my life than I've been in a while too. So I would actually maybe consider moving. My kids are done with school, and one of them lives halfway across the country. So, we could look, but it wouldn't be because I didn't want to live there anymore. It would just be because we're in a situation where we don't have our home anymore, and we need a place to stay, and we would look at all of our options at that point.
Yeah. No, I don't think it would necessarily, I mean, it's not necessarily dangerous in Bakersfield. It's relatively safe, but it also particularly if it was in like an area that's more prone to disaster, I think about areas like Santa Rosa up there, places like New Orleans and whatever. I mean, I feel like, you definitely have like a connection, and there's things that you like really love about the place and the space, but then if there's continuous disasters, it's sort of like, do the positives outweigh the negatives? Like, do you have to rebuild your house like every 3 years? Like, having to, go through that trauma, over and over again, like I think would be really difficult. But at the same time, there's a lot of history in those places, and you may have a lot of personal connections, and you're just like, well, no, like this is home, like regardless, and I'll stay here. But at some point, when you think of like parts of New Orleans and even parts of like Northern California, like Paradise, it's sort of like at some point, like they just may not exist anymore, like badly, or just like portions of like those cities and areas. It's sort of like, okay, like the entire like west side of this neighborhood is gone. And
everything, yeah, you're right. Paradise, that would be really hard, even though it is, I mean, it was beautiful, that Feather Ribbon Canyon idea, but In Sonoma County, there's a couple of places that flood with some regularity. And I grew up there, and I was always surprised at the people that would come back. And it's like, it's going to flood, maybe not this year, but next year. And there they would be.
Wow.
Not me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like the other thing kind of tied into this is that, what I can't remember if these fires were caused by like some electrical issues with PG&E. It's always like the debate of like, oh, is this like a man-made disaster? Is this climate change? Like what is this? And it's sort of like as they continue to happen, like it seems like you can attribute like a certain, probably a good amount to like climate change, but then there's also just like really terrible, I guess, negligence or oversight by like groups, that should be like, maintaining things better. Like, I don't really want to point the finger at like specific corporations or like governmental organizations that need to be maintaining it, but like, is it just like a perfect storm right now of like climate changing, like lack of infrastructure, lack of just like responsibility, like, lack of, like negligence that's causing this to happen? And sort of like, is it just like a perfect storm right now for these natural disasters that are going to kind of continue to occur, especially with the fires in California? I mean, it's sort of, I don't really know a whole lot about it. I'm not like a naturalist or, work for expert in forestry, but it's sort of like, what measures can be taken to prevent these things from happening?
I don't know. And you can insure yourself, but there is a clause on your insurance that says not covered if it's an act of God. Well, what's that definition? And it's kind of frightening. What is, if you've ever had an insurance claim?
Because a wildfire could technically be considered an act of God, but then if they investigate it and they're like, oh no, like PG&E or whomever chopped down this telephone pole or it fell over, and that was like they were supposed to maintain it, so that wasn't an act of God, it was like an act of like negligence on this company's or something like that.
Yeah. And then what happens if they go bankrupt? You're still out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know how to fix that situation. It's that's way beyond my knowledge, but
and then everything else.
we need to try and do something because it's getting really bad. And I don't know if the fact that our population's boomed over the years, if that's part of the issue too. And where people want to live in beautiful places, and beautiful places often have a lot of trees around them, and so we're building more and more homes in areas where if there is a fire, there's a good chance that homes are going to go up with them. So,
Well, and in Sonoma County, a lot of times the infrastructure hasn't been able to keep up with that. In the, Santa Rosa, Sebastopol, Roanoke Park, all those areas.
Yeah, and there's also, I guess, just undetermined factors like the author mentioned, where there had been a drought for several years, and finally, like, there was a season with some pretty heavy rain, which was great, but it just caused more grass to grow, which then 2 years more of drought just created even more like highly flammable tinder, basically. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, yeah, like it rained. It's actually like, oh no, like that's, if it doesn't continue to rain like this, then it's gonna be really problematic. So that was interesting to think about.
So I don't know. I didn't. Maybe it's because I have family there, but I didn't, from his writing or his recitation, I didn't feel the inferno as much as I thought I would. I mean, it was just fireballs.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. Even like, even like his neighbor's account of like, I stayed there from like 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. like trying to fight it off. Like that just seems like crazy. And that was like the heartbreaking thing where like when the firefighters get there, he's like, sorry we couldn't save your house, but they saved every other house
Yeah.
in the neighborhood. It's sort of like,
Or the Starbucks.
yeah, I thought that, the irony of that, yeah, was like hilarious. Where it's sort of this like, yeah, like it was completely untouched. It's sort of like they clearly have enough money to rebuild. Like
Yeah.
they'll be okay. But I don't know. I guess so yeah, I thought, yeah, I mean, there's sort of like there's like nothing. I don't know, just how helpless like you can feel. Like I mean, I guess that's kind of part of it, where it's sort of like that guy stayed back and tried to do everything he could, and they got to a point where it's like, I can't do anything. I don't have the resource, and like there's my house, like it's about to just go up in flames. Like kind of just like the helplessness, but also just like how dangerous that is. It's like I kind of agree with you, where I never felt like, okay, it's like this impending doom. It seems like everybody just kind of like got out of town and got out like in enough of a period of time, but there's no real just like, oh, I mean, like we didn't even have time to think. It's kind of like we all left like in time, and then we're gonna go back and check it out.
Yeah.
Like some people, didn't really have like that luxury, like as far as like how quickly the fire was moving. I mean, it looks like it took about 6 hours, but it definitely did a ton of damage.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I had some problems loading it all on mine. So did it talk about the couple that stayed in their swimming pool like all night long? That was a real interesting news story.
No, it didn't talk about them. Like I don't know if they were part of that same
Yeah.
fire. I mean,
I was-
they were. It did talk about several like different people. A lot of it too, like it was just sort of there are other people that talk to, like their struggles just to like get by. Like one of his other neighbors was, I don't know if you got to the part where he was caring for his partner and like another like 91-year-old person that was
Right.
there. It was sort of like, how do you, I mean, like, what do you do? Like, and especially like that's the scary thing with like electricity. If people are like dependent upon dialysis or like, thing oxygen like suppliers and things like that, like how do you keep people alive that are so dependent upon like our resources? Like that was really scary. He did, there were some people that died like um within that neighborhood. They just like weren't able to get out, and some
Yeah.
animals died too. You mentioned some pets dying as well, so like that's always sad. um
No, I
but
didn't finish like the last 10 pages or so. So the other thing that I don't know, maybe because I knew so much firsthand stuff is the goodness of people is just astounding. And the number of things that he mentioned, also his tone was just amazing. It was never poor me or anything. It was a recitation of facts, and we're dealing with it, and we were the lucky ones. These were some of the problems that we had, but there were so many things they did in Sonoma County and in Santa Rosa to help. And people gave and just freely opened, to feed people and the firefighters and all the people. It's just quite amazing when you watch how people can react to a disaster, and the goodness and the resourcefulness of people. There was some, they talked about looting, and that was awful, but seemed like there was a lot of good. It renews your faith in humanity.
Yeah, I think it was interesting. It's interesting whenever there's a disaster. I think people's true character kind of shines through. And like you said, I think most people are inherently good people. And there were a lot of instances where people just did some really great things, helping people, neighbors, taking care of neighbors, and, people they didn't even know, just helping them through this incredibly difficult time. And then there are, there are still some of those, the bad apples, and, there were looters and there were landlords taking advantage of situations. And that's kind of a bummer that it kind of shines a light on that too. So I think it shines a light on the good, but it also shines light on the bad whenever there's a situation like that. But yeah, it's you can see a lot about how people truly are in situations like that.
yeah, I mean, I guess like a lot of times, reading things like that I think are great, but I also feel like, I wish it didn't take some sort of natural disaster for people to kind of like behave that way, or for like the goodness of people to come out. Like, I wish like people would kind of always have that sort of like, giving, like community minded nature, at all times, not just in like a disaster, but, moving forward. And I think like that's a large part too of, for some folks wanting to stay there and rebuild, is that, the community that they're a part of, that ties them together, and kind of going through this, having other people that have gone through the same thing definitely binds them even more. So yeah, I get it. I get why people would want to stay, even though like it might seem like, insurmountable.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's about all the time we've got. We should probably wrap it up here. Thanks everyone for listening. So do we have a title for next month? Did Rafa have something to throw out? Or?
Yes. I think it's going to be I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara. And it's kind of the whole situation about how one woman kind of keeps alive the hunt for the Golden State Killer. And so, and it's now an HBO show as well. So
Right.
Should be different than what we've done in the past. We'll check it
Oh,
out.
that'd be fun. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So we'll be trying again this lunch hour thing. We're trying all different times and days, and let us know what you think.
All right. Absolutely. Thanks everybody. You guys have a great day. Thanks for talking, Sherry and David. See you guys later.
Have a good one.